It is day 25 of war here in Israel. Rocket alert sirens have been blaring throughout Israel's southern communities in recent hours. In the early hours of this Tuesday morning, the IDF destroyed the house of Saleh al-Arouri, the deputy head of Hamas's political bureau, who oversaw some of the terror group's activities in the West Bank. The Israel Defense Forces says its troops also killed numerous Hamas terrorists during ground operations in the Gaza Strip over the past day, as well as striking some 300 terror targets. In the north, IDF fighter jets destroyed a Hezbollah facility housing weapons inside of Lebanon. This as the exchange of fire between the Iranian-backed terror group and the Israeli military continues. Israel's police and Shin Bet security agencies say 3 Israelis have also been arrested in the country's north on suspicion of having connections with ISIS. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu on Monday evening dismissing the idea that Israel would agree to a ceasefire with Hamas, saying that those calling for one are in effect calling for the state of Israel to surrender to terrorism, something it absolutely will not do. With me here in studio is Reserve Brigadier General Amir Avivi, the Director of Israel's Defense and Security Forum and the former Deputy Commander of the IDF Gaza Strip Division. Thank you for being here with me this afternoon. I want to start with the situation at the moment on the southern front. I understand that things are heating up on the northern front, but for the time being, these seem to be exchanges that are relatively contained, that hasn't broken out into full-scale war. But there are now satellite images showing Israeli tanks well into Gaza and with a clear purpose to root out Hamas. The IDF has a clear objective. The government's objective as well is to position this to the international community of rooting out Hamas and being able to replace it with something else. What is that something else? What happens the day after?
So let's understand what is the end game militarily first. To root Hamas and Palestinian Islamic Jihad and to dismantle all of their capabilities in the Gaza Strip, this requires basically conquering the whole Gaza Strip. So we are doing that at the moment in the northern part. Eventually, a month from now, 2 months from now, we'll have to also maneuver to the south because they have very strong strongholds in the south. We might see also leaders of Hamas and even some of our Israelis who are hostages being moved to the south as we are maneuvering into the north. So eventually we'll have to conquer the whole Gaza Strip. It will take a long time. And then it will take months and months to really clean up the whole Gaza Strip, maybe years. Then, only then, you know, we can talk about what's next. But what's next, we need to look at it also first militarily, only then talk about civil issues. We cannot ensure the people of Israel, and especially the people who live in the south, that terror won't come back if we don't do 2 things. One, control the Egyptian border. This is where endless amount of weapons, know-how, technology, money is going into the Gaza Strip from Iran through Egypt. We need to control this border now and maybe forever. And we need full freedom of operation in the Gaza Strip, like we have in Judea and Samaria, the same thing, in order to prevent the build-up again. And then the question will be, how do we manage civilly? First of all, we need to see what's left there. I mean, I don't know how Gaza will look the day after. We must understand that almost every single building and house in Gaza is connected to tunnels. And every building that is connected to a tunnel will have to tear apart and bring it down, so we don't have terrorists going out these tunnels and attacking.
Stay with me. I want to just go to our correspondent, Pierre Clochindler, while we have him on the line, who's joining us from southern Israel. Pierre, we know that there was a house hit in the Gaza border area from rocket fire coming from Hamas into Israel. And this also comes on the announcement by Israel that some 80 trucks of humanitarian aid will enter the Gaza Strip later today.
Right, and half of those humanitarian trucks carrying water, food, and medical supply have already been checked and are entering the Gaza Strip. Half, that means about 39 to 40 trucks. And the goal is to reach the capacity of 80 trucks today, which is a big peak since the start of the hostilities carried out by Hamas against Israel. The goal is to reach 100 trucks a day, which is the full capability of the Rafah border crossing between Egypt and the Gaza Strip. Israel insists that no fuel will be sent to the southern part of the Gaza Strip in spite of US pressure at this moment. And we've heard already that there could be some sort of modicum of understanding between Israel and the US regarding fuel, if that fuel is indeed sent to the people in need and not to Hamas, and only in the southern part of the Gaza Strip at this moment.
Correspondent Pierre Kloshner, thank you for that update from the south. Still with me in studio, Reserve Brigadier General Amir Avivi. Amir, something that I want to talk about because I don't feel that the viewers fully understand this. The Hamas leadership is currently sitting in their villas in Qatar, in Turkey, in other areas that are hosting them. But when we talk about the fact that the IDF has taken out terror leaders of the Hamas group, what exactly are they referring to? So
they're referring to the company commanders, to the battalion commanders, to the brigade commanders, and there was one commander who was, like, let's say, a general in the Hamas terror army. But the political leadership, the ones who are leading all of that, they're hiding, probably underneath Shifa Hospital. Many of them, as you said, are in Turkey or Qatar or Lebanon. And look, like we did with the Nazis, we are going to hunt every single one of them, even if it takes years. Nobody will be spared here. They are going to pay for what they did. And the same goes for all these terrorists inside Gaza. We are going in, as we are doing now, and we are going to kill all of them. And there is only two ways to go. Or they will be killed, or unconditional surrender. This is exactly what Europe faced with the Nazis. This is exactly what Churchill said when he had to start fighting the Nazis. Unconditional surrender. That's it. There is no other option.
Victory at all costs.
Yeah, and at all costs. And we're willing to pay the cost for decisive victory. I think that the army is very, very professional. They are doing things in an amazing way. You know, the Air Force is assisting dramatically. The ground forces, the Navy is assisting, intelligence. We're doing things slowly, pace by pace. We're not taking chances. The fighting in the streets is fierce. We're not seeing pictures. There is no media, but our soldiers are fighting fiercely on the ground, eliminating threats, moving forward. And as we saw yesterday, this is something I've been saying in the last 3 weeks, the best chance to bring our sons and daughters back, the hostages, is the ground incursion. The more we go in, the bigger are the chances that we'll get to them and we'll manage to free them.
I want to get an update from our correspondent, Robert Swift, who is standing by for us in northern Israel. Rob, no doubt plenty of reservists are getting ready to possibly battle with Hezbollah on the northern front. What's the situation like on the ground now? Over the last couple of weeks, there have been exchanges of fire between the Israeli military and Hezbollah. We've seen anti-tank missiles being shot over the border into Israel. But we've also been hearing sirens going off from possible drones and other kinds of aircraft crossing over as well. That could be a potential threat of infiltration to residents in the north that have also evacuated toward the center.
Yeah, there's a fair bit that's constantly going on here in the background. Usually we're talking about 2, 3, 4 incidents a day. The last one here took place about an hour ago, where we witnessed a small exchange of fire. It seemed to be between Hezbollah mortars, with the Israeli military responding with artillery fire. And that's kind of par for the course here. Yesterday there was about 3 incidents like this. Two of them involved artillery and mortar exchanges between the two sides, and the third was a launch of anti-tank missiles, which the Israeli military responded to with artillery fire. Now, overnight, the Israeli military used aircraft to kind of hammer home its point that it has the fire superiority here by attacking Hezbollah arms depots slightly further to the north inside southern Lebanon. But occasionally these little skirmishes are taking place every day. Yesterday was no different to the day before, and today we're likely to see more of these sorts of actions. And it's unclear when, if at all, they will either cease or escalate into something much larger.
And no doubt that's what we're all waiting to see, and obviously analysing from the ground as well as studio correspondent Robert Swift giving us that update from the north. Thank you for that. And joining me now from Rehovot in central Israel is retired Major Dan Pfefferman, the executive director of the NGO Sharaka. Thank you very much for being with me this afternoon. Something that we've been discussing here in studio with Amira Vivi, and what I want to bring to your attention as well is this idea of Israeli troops are now well into the Gaza Strip trying to wipe out the leadership of Hamas, and also anyone that either is part of the terror organization, pledges allegiance to the terror organization. Once it does that, because the indication is what was is not what will be. They cannot leave a stone unturned when it comes to Hamas. What does that mean for the founders that are currently sitting in Qatar, in Turkey? Is Israel going to be able to get to them as well and essentially cut the head off the snake?
I'm not sure if cutting the head off the snake is going to be the appropriate method to deal with those Hamas leaders who are sitting outside of the Gaza Strip right now. What I think we're going to see, and what we're probably seeing behind the scenes, is a lot of anger from moderate countries in the region about, with a clear understanding that Hamas instigated this conflict. Hamas Israel dragged the region into this conflict. And you're already seeing, for example, even from Hezbollah backers, who are criticizing Hamas leaders for sitting in 7-star hotels in Doha while they're fighting Israel on the front lines, and while of course, Gaza is under siege as part of the war. What I think we should see and what we should push for is a regional approach that brings together the Gulf countries, the modern actors, and puts pressure on Qatar as well to finally remove Hamas leadership from these countries, not give them a shelter, not give them a base, and take away their avenues of political support. What that looks like in the end, I'm not sure, but that should be the strategy that Israeli leaders and the international community should be pursuing.
Something that I'd like to speak to you about is the relations between Israel and Turkey. I can tell you that we have struggled to bring on a pro-Turkish government interviewee at the moment because of the situation. Now, Israel and Turkey have recently rekindled ties, and we know from past experience watching Erdogan and analyzing him as well, that because the country is in a geostrategic position, he tends to play both sides, and we've seen that from different scenarios throughout the world and different conflicts. But this is different. This is not playing both sides. This is taking a very clear side to the point of saying that Jews are not allowed in Turkey at the moment, where we're seeing anti-Semitism raging. What do we make in terms of the ties going forward? And is Israel being, in a sense, negligent for ever trying to return or go back to those rekindling of ties?
No, I don't think Israel, should question that course of action. Israel needs to have proper relations with all of the countries in the region, and Turkey has shown itself usually to be a pragmatic actor. I think what we're seeing is a combination of two things, and that's one is Turkey is trying to use this moment to galvanize support for itself, to once again make itself the leader, or trying to be the leader of public opinion in the region. And as it gauges public opinion, it senses that being anti-Israel at the moment is in its interest if it's trying to stake that claim. Just a year ago, as the Abraham Accords and the new agreements were gaining steam around the region, you saw Turkey looking the other way and trying once again to become friends with Israel, inviting our president and our foreign minister to Ankara and sending their foreign minister here. On the other hand, so Turkey will always play that kind of interest game and try to stake out a middle ground of whatever it feels serves its interest. What might also be happening here is we're seeing once again the true colors of Turkish President Erdogan who may just be, and I think it's time maybe the international community and in Israel certainly would admit it, he himself is quite anti-Israel and pro-Hamas, and those are his inclinations.
I want to shift the topic to more of the internal security and the internal politics at the moment by asking you, generalizations we cannot use in this instance because of, firstly, how sensitive this topic is, and secondly, because generalizations tend to form stereotypes, and that's certainly not the case. Israel has a very large Arab population, of which many of them identify and stand with the Palestinian narrative, but many of them see themselves first and foremost as Israelis. There's been a fortune of criticism, however, that the community at the moment has been relatively mum when it comes to the situation in Israel. And I'm curious to know if that comes from a place of perhaps some standing with the Palestinian narrative, or from the fact that they themselves may be threatened and their personal security may be threatened because of the fact that they are Arabs, many Muslim, in the state of Israel.
I think, first of all, I think it's important to highlight, and let's take a chance to use this platform to highlight the many individuals and organizations of Israeli Arabs who are standing proudly with the state of Israel, fighting for the state of Israel, serving as paramedics for the state of Israel. A number of initiatives have opened on the ground in Rahat, in villages in the north, to pack food aid for those harmed in the south. The Atidna youth movement, a youth movement of over 5,000 Arab Israeli youth, just issued a very strong condemnation on a public billboard on the Ayalon freeway against Hamas, saying Israeli Arabs and Jews stand together against the terror of Hamas, and this does not represent them. And they have been volunteering in a number of ways over the last 2 weeks to try to help in the south. We know many Bedouin Israelis were killed, were murdered by Hamas on the first day of this war, at least 40. We know that Bedouin drivers and paramedics risked their lives, especially at the music festival, to run in and try to rescue as many people as they can. One young Bedouin man actually died in the process of trying to save fellow Jews. We know of Arab-Israeli hotel owner Samuel Karnawi, who opened his chain of hotels at no cost to those having to flee the fighting in the south. I think the dominant narrative and the majority of Israeli Arabs are standing proudly with Israel, definitely standing against Hamas. You also hear this from Ram head Mansour Abbas, who came out against Hamas's actions and called to release the hostages. At the same time, and this should be expected, they are sympathizing with their fellow Arab Muslims who are the civilians who are being hurt in the Gaza Strip, and that is aligned. At the last point here, though, of course, there are radicals within Israeli Arab society who are threatening, sometimes with violence, those who take such claims. And the state of Israel, the Israeli society, the broader society should stand with those who are voicing clear anti-Hamas stances, who are getting out there and risking themselves to support it. And the state should do everything it can to support and bolster these voices.
I want to also point out that many Israeli Jews obviously also standing up for the fact that innocent civilians on the other side of the border are being put in harm's way. Unfortunately, it's not just the Arab Muslim population. Innocent life being lost in a time of war on both sides is absolutely horrific and should be stood up for as well. I want to thank you very much, retired Major Dan Pfefferman, the Executive Director of the NGO Sharaka, for joining me this afternoon.